I feel like the focus should be find what you're passionate about and figure out how you can make money with that. Setting that for myself made it be broad enough so that if my interests ever changed, I wouldn't feel pressured to stay doing something that I didn't like to do just because there was money involved.
On the 45th episode of Passion in Progress, creative entrepreneur and YouTuber REDROMINA. In this podcast, we talk all things content creator, and Romina gives us great insight as to the work ethic necessary to be successful across all social platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'd like to take a second to thank all of my patrons supporting this podcast so far through 45 episodes. It's amazing what you guys do. And without your help, this would not be possible. If you would like to support this podcast, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com/Javier Mercedes. If that's not your cup of tea and you still want to help me out with this podcast, you can always share it out with a friend via text, Facebook, Twitter, inside your Instagram stories. On any of those platforms, I am at Javier Mercedes X. That's JAVIER MERCEDES, just like the car. And as always, one last thing that I would ask of you, if you are listening to this podcast and you have continually gotten value out of what you've heard from this show, please leave me a review on iTunes. It means the world to me seeing the feedback that I get from the fans listening to the show. And it means that what I'm doing has been adding value to people's lives. And that's what it's all about. So without further ado, let's dive into the 45th episode of Passion in Progress with creative entrepreneur and YouTuber REDROMINA. What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show where we talk to inspiring individuals, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions. And we have quite the guest on the show today: filmmaker, podcaster, online content creator, author, speaker. It's a lot of things.
It is a lot of things.
It is REDROMINA. How are you today?
I am fantastic. Wow. After that intro, I think I need a sip of I should have gotten caffeinated tea instead of herbal. I made a mistake with my turmeric ginger.
I am currently in Atlanta where you reside. And thank you so much for inviting me over and to do this podcast. I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. Welcome to my humble abode.
Speaking of where we are right now, this is where you record a lot of your videos. And I have to say, you pump out a lot of content and it's consistent. I think of a lot of the creators that I watch on YouTube. Yours is just enjoyable. For those that don't know, it's a lot of travel content, like fashion, and then also like business stuff too. But consuming your content, it's digestible and it's fun, and you keep your edits so sweet. That's my explanation. Do you want to tell the audience what your content is and what you do?
Wow, thank you. I especially like the snappy stuff. I think, you kind of encapsulated it so well. I'm just I'm kind of all over the place. Everybody says, you gotta pick your niche. You gotta, do that one thing and just do it really well. And I'm just nah, I ain't about that life. Well, when I first started this channel, I first started YouTube in 2006. And I've gone through a number of different channels. But this channel, I started it in mind to have it be a business. So of course I wanted it to be very niche, and I wanted it to have, I wanted it to be very strategic. And I did that for a couple of years. And now this year is all about taking risks. And it's all about stepping outside of myself and kind of making myself be more vulnerable and putting myself out there more. So there's just kind of a lot that's going on with my channel right now. But at the end of the day, what I do want to do is to encourage people to live their life freely and with passion. So to always have passion doing whatever it is that you want to do. And for me, that is, I love to travel. And so I don't want to be, known as a travel guru, because that's not me. And I'm not a travel vlogger either. I ain't about that life, And I just, whenever I do stuff that's travel related, advice, travel tips and things like that, it's just stuff that I've experienced myself. And I figure, well, if my audience is doing everything correctly and they are living this life where they have a lot of freedom, then they might actually want to go and travel. And so this is my advice to go do that.
Yeah, I noticed what you may do with some of your experiences is what you go and you'll have like a vlog-esque type of video for your experience at the place. But then when you come back, you research on whatever that place is that you went to, and then come out with like these like 5 tips to do then in this place. But then you use the B-roll from your vlog. It's very, very strategic.
Yes. And it's also very great for when I'm not traveling. Because I can still put out that content that people want to see that's travel related without actually going anywhere.
Not only that, but it helps you reuse your content. Recently, most of it has been stuff from Cuba. Do you want to talk about your experience there and what you've been putting out with that kind of content?
Cuba, well, first of all, I'm Cuban. So I have, family in Cuba. And Cuba is one of the most fascinating places that I've ever been to. Mm-hmm. And I hope to encourage more people to go visit Cuba, but with the purpose of meeting Cubans and actually getting to know, the people and what they're about. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Cuba is that it's a very interesting topic on the internet. And so I get a lot of, both sides of the spectrum. Either people hate the fact that I've gone to Cuba or people love the fact that I've gone to Cuba. So it's kind of interesting to kind of get, both perspectives, especially as I'm reading the comments and people just comment stuff and don't know what they're saying. Yeah. and I'm just like, I'm Cuban. So most people don't know that I am, especially like when they're watching my videos, like my top 5s or things like that, because I don't think I actually mention that in those videos. Like, I don't go around like telling people like, hey, like I'm from Florida. Let me tell you about all the beaches you should visit. Like, so I don't do that for Cuba either. Yeah. So people just don't assume that I'm Cuban. And so when I talk about it, they assume that I come from a place of ignorance or from a place that I don't know what I'm talking about. And but that obviously isn't the case.
I don't know. From my standpoint, when I watch those videos, especially, you can see that you're getting acclimated within the community. And plus, not only that, but you're like, every video that you put out has a specific, like, you go into detail about like, well, you can take this kind of taxi. If you don't want to take that, you can go this other mode of transport and like all that stuff. And then you're meeting with the other creators that are down there, which is, I thought, really cool that there's a community down there.
Yeah, I definitely want to bring more light. Like next time that I go back, I want to do something a little bit more in depth with them, because when I went there, it was something that was obviously it's hard to get people, like a lot of people together in Cuba, just because of like the lack of communication that there is there.
Elaborate. What do you mean?
As far as like they don't have access to internet, like it's very limited, their access to internet, even though it's opening up more now.
I know you pointed that out. Like it's hard for content creators to create content there. Like what is and you had that little orange box thing that you brought up on one of your videos. Is that something that like you would be using there?
No, you can't take that there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of it's just very limited how much internet and stuff that they have there. And there's no AT&T, like there's no Sprint.
Do you have to go to like a cafe? It's like when you go there, like how do you get out your videos?
Sure. So while I'm there, what I do is I actually schedule my videos before I leave.
I gotcha.
So I don't even have to worry about trying to find internet while I'm there, because it's virtually like impossible to get good internet. You can pretty much get internet to like,
think about.
Yeah. I mean, you have to go to, they have like internet parks. So it's actually like a park, like you go, there's green stuff.
Yeah.
And like you go there and you have like these cards that you have to pay in order to get internet like by the hour. And then like you use that code to like log into like the Wi-Fi. It's like a public Wi-Fi that's like in the park. And so you have to go there to access the internet. But some houses and places now have the internet, like Airbnbs and stuff like that. They will actually have access to it. Like they have their own routers and things like that, but it's something that's still very like novice over there.
Can you elaborate on the social life then? How is it there if there's no internet?
You're so funny.
No, I want to know, because like obviously in the 90s and everything growing up, I was like, there was no like, oh hey, here, like if you wanted to go to a party, maybe you might chat with somebody on AIM and be like, hey, let me do, like instant message them. But that was like the starting of like talking to people. Yeah. So how do people? You said it was hard to communicate. So how do you socialize there?
I know it's very much like it's very much like how it was maybe like 20 years ago. Okay. Right. So you basically, when you call someone and you're like, hey, do you want to meet up at such and such park at 5 p.m? Okay, we'll see you there. And you just have to trust that person will be there.
I love it. That is so cool.
But yeah, I mean, you can't be like, hey, like I'm on my way. Like that's just...
Yeah. Moving on, you were talking about 2019 was the like year of you coming out and being vulnerable and everything. Can you explain what your 100K goal is?
Oh boy, my 100K goal.
Yeah.
That goal is kind of like me just, just putting everything out there, and whatever sticks, is what's going to stick. And the 100K goal is to get to 6 figures with the REDROMINA brand, and to get 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and 100,000 followers on Facebook and on Instagram. And I chose those platforms because there's the ones that I'm it's realistic for me to kind of get to that point. But yeah, it's kind of, the idea behind it is more like just going at it 110% and not holding back. Because there's kind of this idea of having a strategy and, having a plan. I feel like for YouTube channels, it's like there's this idea that, oh, I'm going to do Fortnite videos, and that's like all I'm going to do, right? And I'm going to upload, every Tuesday at 11 a.m. That's it. That's like my plan. I'm going to do this. I have got SEO. I've got all these things. But the truth is that there's a lot of things that can happen. There's a lot of anomalies as well. I mean, like you just look at like Joanna Cedia, who got 1 million subscribers in 3 months. And that's an anomaly. I mean, she didn't have like a strategy. That wasn't something that you just, she wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get, like that was my plan too when I started my channel. But I guess the idea with the 100K goal is not so much actually hitting the number, so much as living what I preach. Which is to do everything just, 110% and just put myself completely into all of my projects. And I think that when you have like some kind of strategy, I feel like it kind of might hold you back a little bit, because you aren't experimenting, you aren't doing things that are out of the norm. And I feel like magic happens there.
Powerful. Yeah. That's awesome. It's funny because I think I've brought up this concept on like the last 5 podcasts, but the idea of goals, and instead of setting goals, like you're saying, just already acting as if you have achieved the goal, or you are living the lifestyle of whatever set goal is. And like what you're saying is like, well, if I'm going to achieve this, it's not necessarily the numbers per se, but it's the mindset and how I'm living in that moment to do the goal itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you worded it perfectly.
And it's also interesting because when I had Cody Warner on, he talked about lead and lag goals, and I'm going to get the terminology wrong, but there's like, if it's a lag goal, then it's something that it's like a number, and then it's like something that you're trying to achieve. But then if it's a lead goal, it's something that you can move more towards, and you can actually do actionable items to get towards that goal. Like you said, it's like, oh man, yeah, I have 1 million subscribers. That's like, that'd be cool. Like, that's what I'm going to do. But what am I doing right now to strategically get to that point?
Yeah, you just brought up a really great point, which is I'm extremely goal oriented, and every year around December, I make a list of goals for myself, both personal and work-related goals. And those are my goals for the entire year. And these are goals which is, it's very like number oriented, but I try to keep it as realistic as possible, with the idea that if I achieve that goal within, a few months into the year, I can still surpass that goal. So the idea is, like, last year, my goal was to hit 15,000 subscribers, but I hit that before June. So I wasn't like, oh, well, I'm done. So like, it wasn't like I packed up, and went on vacation for the rest of the year. I continued to work, and I just changed the goal to 20,000. It was like, I just kept, pushing myself and pushing the limits. And I guess when I make goals, they are very specific, and I do have a strategy. And my idea with this 2019, this whole like experimenting phase, is not so much like throwing all of that away and just being like, oh, like strategy's dumb. Like, no, I'm still very strategic about what I am doing. It's just very experimental. So what I'm doing right now, and just to kind of give you more of a like specific kind of breakdown.
Let's elaborate.
Let's go deep into it. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually breaking up the year between 3 months. So right now I have goals and projects that I'm working on that I need to finish by April. And so when I get to April, I'm going to look back at these 3 months, January, February, and March, and I'm going to assess what I've done.
Love that. And
kind of move and forward so that the next 3 months I can set different goals. So instead of just having, all of those like mini goals and tasks that I have to do every 3 months will align with the overall goal of, the different goals that I have for the entire year. But I feel like it's a little bit more realistic because things happen, again, life. And it's just kind of like, I had the idea of being done with my course already by February, but because I had to go to New York for a whole week, like that whole week I did not work on the course.
It was a content madness. It was just like so much filming. Yeah.
But it was something that like it wasn't that I went on vacation. It was just like, it was a work opportunity. It was something that I got, which contributed to my overall goal of the year. But because of that, I had to push back on, on all the rest of the dates of, the other goals that I had going on. But so I feel like having those little tangible steps to kind of get to the overall goal, I think it's realistic and is a really good strategy in case something does come up, in case life throws those little spontaneous, curveballs at you.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's a curveball, because I think it's more like you're hopping on opportunity. And for the listeners, what she's referencing that don't know, she just spoke at 368 Casey Neistat's stomping grounds for creators offline, for a whole bunch of creators, and I was there. It was quite the speech. What I want to dive into though is your cross-platform functionality, and just like how you have like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you have your website. How do you prioritize what you're working on? And say it's the end of 3 months. Has there ever been a point when you pivoted on something that didn't work? We should definitely do something else.
Yeah. I think you have to, right? Mm-hmm. You have to pivot. And
do you have a specific example?
I don't think that I do.
Okay. Everything that you do works.
I don't think that I have a specific example as far as, I guess the biggest example would be like what I was saying earlier, the fact that I was making a lot of more travel focused content, but now I've started to incorporate different kinds of content so that it's a little bit more a variety channel.
There you go. Not only that, but does that, I feel like that would probably be more fulfilling creatively.
It is. It is. And part of the reason that I did it is because the certain algorithms have made it difficult for travel content creators to thrive on the platform. And I'm speaking specifically about YouTube. But I feel like this is something that kind of spans through different platforms as well. And the main reason is because, first of all, you have people who view your content because who view the travel content because they want to learn about a specific place. And then when you make something that has nothing to do with that place, then they don't watch it. But there's, I'm a person, and I don't like just one place.
It's not like you're specifically only going to make Cuba content all day, every day.
Right. Which was a problem that I was running into, is it kind of like, if I just kept going down that road and just making the content that people wanted to see, then if I ever steered away from that, it would completely fail. So I'm trying to get my audience accustomed to the fact that the part that is consistent about my content is me. It is not, whatever place that I'm going to. It is me and my experience and how I share that with you so that it can affect you and influence you to make an impact in your own future. So it's not about, just, that topic at hand. It's about my experience with that topic at hand.
And I think I definitely get that. Like, if you watch like your last 20 videos, it's definitely because it breaches the spectrum of all those different things, like the fashion, the business, and travel. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I feel like you have a way of approaching topics, your own unique style, and giving the audience like the Red Romina brand version of however those facts need to come across. I think Sarah Dietschy puts it best when she says, one for you, one for them, one for you, one for them, in terms of like making content. And what I mean by that is, like, on my own channel, it might be a tutorial on Premiere Pro on something like that. And then the next video might be something that's like a vlog, but it's like, oh, this is where I get to be creative and actually make the content. How on top of it do you have to be schedule-wise, and how are you keeping your sanity, not just working all the time? And what does a typical day look like for Romina?
Sure. I guess it would depend on what my goals are for the day, because I love time management. And I
couldn't tell.
I am super organized with my time. Actually, the course that I'm working on now is actually about organization and to increase your productivity. So it's all about that. And the question that you just asked me just like completely falls in line with what I'm doing. And how I do that is I have a very specific way of how I manage my schedule on a daily basis. So I will actually plan out my week for the most part before the week has started, and I'll create time blocks for where everything needs to go. And as far as like how I manage like the work-life balance, basically some days that just doesn't exist. It's just work all of the time.
But I think at some point it's not necessarily like, yes, it is work, but it's like, it's what you want to be doing.
Right, exactly. But I mean, the only reason that I say that is because I've gotten comments before that people say that I'm very fortunate that I don't have to work. And I'm like,
so there's I'm completely cutting you off, but there just one quote I want to enter. I was just listening to Tim Ferriss, and he had this quote about entrepreneurs, and you can work 40 hours for somebody else, but entrepreneurs like spend 100 hours working just to work for themselves. It's like quite a paradox of like what an entrepreneur is, but continue.
Well, that's something that I definitely would like to touch more on this year. Although I know like there's the whole like hustle culture, and everybody's like well aware, like, hey, don't sleep, like if you want to be like whatever, that whole thing. But that's not really what I would like to do. It would be more just showing people that just because I have the freedom to like move around everywhere doesn't mean that I'm not working. But just to kind of go back to your original question, some days it is like that. It's basically just work, because I need to finish something. Like my last Cuba video that I did, which was a couple weeks ago, was about Havana. Mm-hmm. That video like nearly killed me. I was like, because I did not plan to record as much as I did. And it was just something that I ended up having to spend so many hours editing just to make it just exactly how I wanted it to be. And it was just one of those videos that was extremely hard for me to do. And like my work-life balance for those couple days was just not existent. Mm-hmm. But on a normal day, usually what will happen is that I will schedule out my day. I have, breakfast in the morning. That's like so important to me.
You have a second IG account for it?
I do. You're good. I'm like that. I don't. Do you
want to plug it?
That is my second Instagram account, which is at REDROMINA Eats, which I don't like publicize really that much because it's really just like for me because I just love food. Yeah. But I don't want to be like that person who like takes pictures of their food, but I am just because I love food. But anyway,
I was just trying to point out how much you emphasize breakfast.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Exactly. Exactly.
Passion in progress.
What I'm just throwing out
puns.
the jokes over here. That is probably the only pun I'm but pretty much after that I'll just work for most of the day. I'll go to a cafe for the most part and I'll just, work for a bunch of hours. I love tea. Tea is like my fuel. So I have to like.
Can you explain what you do when you're working? Just
yes.
like, because I know what you're doing, but a lot of the people, and I'm thinking about like when you go into a dinner party or something like that, and you're like, you say the words like, oh, I'm a YouTuber. And then they're like, it just opens up this Pandora's box of questions. But can you explain like when you're sitting down at your computer, what does that look like?
It's a lot of eye strain.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I spend most of my time I will spend editing. Mm-hmm. I also do like a lot of website stuff. I love to do a lot of rebranding and just like rewording stuff like all the time.
That's true.
I spend a lot of time doing content scheduling. Mm-hmm. So I will schedule out my posts for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I use Buffer for that. And for the most part, I'll schedule out, I could schedule out a week, a couple weeks, depending on the platform. Like for Instagram, I think I'm scheduled out like pretty much through March. And that's just kind of to have consistent stuff that will always be posting, even if I, look away for a second. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, I will also be posting manually into each of these different platforms. But that's just kind of to always have like a consistent flow of content if I fall asleep for half a sec.
Is there one day where you go to a coffee shop and you're like, this is my Instagram day? I'm just like I'm scheduling out till till this day? Or is it like, how does that look when you actually go to make your bulk content?
Well, it doesn't look like that.
But that's what I'm interested in.
There's a lot of juggling between, the different tasks that I have to do. And it really depends on, how much content I'm putting out that week or the type of content that I'm putting out. Like that video that I was talking about earlier that took me forever to edit. It was something that I wasn't really planning for it to take me so long. Mm-hmm. So of course, like the priority for that day was to finish that video. Mm-hmm. So of course, everything else that I had thought about doing that day just didn't happen. Yeah. And that's something that's kind of like, it just happens, right? Yeah. But for the most part, what I'll do is I'll pretty much like at the end of the week is when I'll start thinking about the kind of stuff that I might want to post for the next week. Or like if I'm, if I find like an interesting article, then I'll just schedule it, like if I want to share that. Mm-hmm. And that can happen whenever. So it's kind of like, I don't really have a specific block of, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing for this time. Mm-hmm. What I like to do is I'll make a to-do list, maybe like the night before, of what I would like to do the next day. And usually I'll do anywhere between 3 to 5 things on that to-do list. I try not to do more than that because I know that it will probably take me time to do each of those things. So I don't want to be disappointed if I don't do them all, you know? So I try to keep it as realistic as possible. And, but I allow for things to happen in my life. So it's definitely something that I've learned to do, because I was definitely more of the type of person that was like, I couldn't deal with change. You know, I couldn't deal with things not going the way that I had planned them to. But it just happened to me so often that I got used to the fact that life was like that.
Yeah. And
so I learned to adapt. And that's something that actually like my YouTube channel has helped me to do, like content creation and having to adapt not only to the ever-changing algorithm, but also to the trends and to my audience, who also changes as well. Because I've noticed just myself as a consumer changing, just like, you know, the same things that I would have, you know, watched 5 years ago, like I would never see myself watching now. And when I think about that, I'm like, well, Romina, like, how can you expect your audience to like keep watching you? Like if you don't change or if they don't change, but like, I can't expect somebody that I don't even know to, you know, keep watching me if they're not interested in what I'm doing anymore. And I can't judge them for that. And I can't be upset about that, you know?
With that, can you talk about just interacting with audience in general and how it looks like on every platform? Like, are you responding to all your DMs? Do you reply to all your YouTube comments? Like, that's a whole nother, I won't say time suck, because it's like, I love like interacting with the audience, but how does that look like for you?
Well, I try to respond
yeah.
to everything. And I guess that's kind of, the idea behind...
Do you respond even to the negative comments?
I try to. Yeah. Why not? It's more engagement for me. And I let them know too. I'm like, hey, thanks so much. Because of you, more people are going to watch this video.
Yeah.
And they're like, wah, wah, wah. I'm like, keep on going. It's like, it's all good for me, man. Yeah, I had this one guy who was like giving me hate about this one video. And I was like, you know, the more you comment on my video, the more money I'm making. And it's to me, it's about community. And the reason that I came onto YouTube in the first place was because I had this place where I could just put my videos, and there was not a place to do that at the time. It was like you had to put a QuickTime file on your website. Like there's like that was it. And as I got infiltrated into like this community of like weirdos that were on this website, I was like, wow, like these are real people from all over the world who are just posting the videos in the same fashion that I am. And I feel like there's this kind of obligation for me to keep that alive. And I don't want that to die. I don't want that to ever be one-sided, because if I did, I would have called up Netflix and been like, hey, I got this really great show idea. Like, can I just make a show? Yeah. And the idea behind, you know, doing content creation on all these different platforms is the fact that I can hear from the audience, directly from the audience. I can hear like what they love about my videos or what they hate about my videos. And that to me is community. And I want to keep doing that even if I can't. Like, you know, It's like I will find a way to do it. And even if YouTube like shut off the comment section tomorrow,
I have no idea why they would do that.
They
could.
I mean, there's stuff that's happening with the comment section now. Basically,
and the dislike button and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you say something in the comment section, it can affect the monetization on a video now. That's like a new thing where it's like, okay, you're silencing the heartbeat of YouTube. And I mean, if that was something that were to happen, it was like, for me, that's why I love Twitter. It's like, it's a place where I go to hang out. And Twitter is like this magical place where you can just talk to people and it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, you can talk to anybody, you know, if like Spielberg was there, I could probably talk to him. I don't know if Spielberg is on Twitter, but I mean, Ron Howard's on Twitter.
There you go. One of the things I love most about Twitter is just the concept of retweeting, as opposed to Instagram. When you share something, you have to it's like 50-50 if somebody's going to tag you in it. Right. And then they get all the credit and everything. It's like kind of irks me, but that's just the nature of the beast. And sometimes if they do tag you, then it's like, oh, it was better. You're better for it. But with Twitter, it's just like, no, you just hit the retweet button and then it's like, and then it just tacks on, but then you can add your own comment onto it. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a feature that I wish Instagram had. I actually had that happen the other day. I posted this quote, and then someone who is a mutual follower, they commented and were like, oh, this is awesome. And then like 2 minutes later, they posted it on their Instagram. And they were like, hey, this is a repost from @RedRomina, which is fine because I was sweet. Like, you know, he gave me like a tag, but like he got like 300% more engagement than I did on the post. But like, I kind of took that as like, oh, like I posted something and I know that it works, but it just didn't work at the time that I posted it or with my audience. Like it just, you know,
exactly.
But at the same time, I was like, God dang it. Like, I wish there was like a regram button.
A regram button. Reject 9 to 5. Can you elaborate on what that means to you?
Yes. It does not mean what you think it means.
There you go.
The idea behind Reject 9 to 5 is a movement to encourage.
Hashtag.
Yes, it is a hashtag. To encourage people to make a living doing what they're passionate about. And I feel like there's this focus on, hey, let me like figure out what job I'm going to do. Like I'm going to figure out what my career is for the rest of my life, where I feel like the focus should be find what you're passionate about and figure out how you can make money with that. And I think this is something that should start off, you know, at a young age. Like for me, it isn't so much, hey, like I want to be doing this for the rest of my life. It's my own personal, and this is something that I set for myself a few years ago, which was establishing what my own purpose and what my mission was in life. And it is to always be happy making my money and to always make a living doing something that I'm passionate about. And I feel like setting that for myself made it be broad enough so that if my interests ever changed, I wouldn't feel pressured to stay doing something that I didn't like to do just because there was money involved. It's, you know, life has so many different phases, and what people are doing now was not a career option when I was applying to colleges. Like content creator was not a thing. Mm-hmm. So for me to plan that out, unless I'm psychic, how would I know? How would I know that would have been an option for me? I wouldn't. So I think what was always important for me, what my mission is to tell stories that inspire people to make an impact. And I feel like that kind of gives me, you know, the freedom to just do whatever will make that happen. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you know, 5 years from now, it's something else. Who knows what it's going to be? Maybe it's going to be like, maybe I'm going to be like a holographic, like, I don't know, something.
Getting into your Star Trek.
Yeah. I'm just like, you know, like the future is there, man. Mm-hmm. But like just talking about that is, you know, I get inspired by Star Trek, mm-hmm. and I want to inspire other people to do things. So like, you know, I don't know the first thing about making a car, but if I can inspire someone to make a car that like drives itself, because I made, you know, some short film where the main character was driving a super dope car that drove itself, mm-hmm. then like I've accomplished my mission. Yeah. And that's kind of something that I encourage people to do with Reject 9 to 5. It's not about like not having a job. It's not like I'm sitting like under a palm tree, like in a hammock. Like that's not, you know, that's not what my mission is with Reject 9 to 5. Hashtag reject 9 to 5, guys.
No, yeah, that's what
it's
with the numbers 9 and the number 5.
Yes. It's not.
And the word 2.
It's not about, just living, like a hippie life. I mean, unless that's, what you want to do. But it's about always being passionate about how you're making your money. Even if it's dog walking. If you freaking love dogs and you want to walk, then make that happen, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like if you were to ask somebody when they're to get morbid, on their deathbed, like, oh, if you could have changed something or did something with your life, what would you have done? But instead of getting that question and then being like, well, I wish I could have done this, you can answer it in a way that is such like, well, I did what I wanted to do.
Right. And I think that we live in a time that we have so many more possibilities. I mean, just 5 years ago, we didn't have the opportunities that we have now. And it's only going to get better because of the internet. We just have access to so many people now and so many opportunities. And there's so many platforms to express yourself and to teach other people to express themselves. It's limitless.
Yeah, you mentioned the going to college content creator. I like just the concept of going to college and like a degree in content creation. I think that's a legit thing that may happen. And if it's not, I mean, I'm sure there's already like I think it's like Jump Cut Academy and other places like it's already online places.
Right.
But just the idea of putting that into an educational institution, I feel like that's not far off. That and the concept of video editor, like audio editor, any kind of whatever. I think the title, just media editor, is going to be like a thing of the future. Because like my personal experience, I feel like I started out as a professional audio engineer, and I moved in. I was a senior video editor for another company, and now I'm just content creator and I do video editing freelance stuff. But it's just so many different spectrums of media editing. Not only that, but there's like website development and like all these other things. It's like you need to get yourself a media editor.
I like that title.
Maybe that's what we should say at dinner parties.
Well, what I've actually started to embrace is a creative entrepreneur.
Boom. I like that.
And that is what I tell people now when they ask me what I do is I'm a creative entrepreneur, which is
that's all encapsulating. I like it.
I mean, it is. When I discovered it, I was like, what? How did I not know that this was like a thing? It's on Wikipedia, kids. Just, look it up. Creative entrepreneur. It's basically investing in yourself or investing in other creatives. Which I think is such it's a fascinating idea because, people invest in properties. Why not invest in myself?
Mm-hmm. You are an avid reader, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the best like books that you would want to recommend if it was just like something that you were giving out as a gift?
I would recommend The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I think that's a really great place to start. If you want to learn how to manage everything by yourself. I think it's just kind of like a good like baseline.
She's doing air quotes, by the way.
Oh yeah, I am doing air quotes. Sorry, I keep forgetting. I've done them like 20 times.
Yeah.
You can tell by the tone of my voice. No, but I think that's just kind of a great baseline to get started with that book. I guess another one that I would say is, and this is kind of maybe not as expected because it's not very tangible, but How to Stop Worrying and How to Start Living by Dale Carnegie. I think that's a really great book because there's like a plethora of books that you can find that will tell you strategically how to do things. But I think that book really helped me to just kind of take everything that I was learning and let it go. And I think that's something that is kind of easy to forget about.
Wait, so you learned something and then you're like, I'm going to forget about this.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so much forgetting about it, but it's about letting it go, just letting it happen, just letting it manifest. You know?
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, what's the point of reading it in the first place if you're just like, I'm really glad I read that. Now let me forget about it.
Yeah, no, it's not so much that. It's more, it's kind of letting it happen in a more natural way than, kind of like systemizing life, I guess.
And getting to the fictional part, one of the things I liked how you brought up in one of your videos is when you're right before you're going to bed, you're not reading something that's like inspirational or whatever, because then you want to start acting on it. Like right when I heard you say that, I was like, oh, that's such a great tip.
Yeah.
But with that being said, can you talk about what, like, you're right before you go to bed, like what is your kind of system in place?
Well, right now, since I am going through like the whole Star Trek franchise, that's pretty much what I do.
Can you explain what you're doing to the people that don't know?
Sure. So I'm watching the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order. And
do you know, like, roughly when was the very first one published and like where? Can you give it almost what the spectrum of that is?
Yeah. So I actually made a spreadsheet.
Oh man, I can't wait to hear this.
I made a spreadsheet with all the different movies and all the different TV shows.
Oh, so you even have movies in there too?
Yeah. I mean, I have to watch the entire thing. And mainly I made the spreadsheet because, well, first of all, I wanted to make sure that I didn't skip over anything. And then secondly, I wanted to see how much time exactly it was going to take. And it is approximately 24 days of content.
Jesus.
Like 20, like
just
midnight to midnight,
yeah.
24 days of content. And right now I'm on season 5 of The Next Generation.
I don't know what that means.
So I mean, it's just a lot of, there's like a couple movies in there and a lot of episodes. Just to go back to your original question was, I might watch, a couple episodes, maybe 1 or 2 episodes of that, or maybe I'll watch a movie. It could be Star Trek or it might not be Star Trek. You guys, like, I have a life outside of Star Trek. But maybe like I'll watch something, and then I may read something. I usually have an audiobook that will play. And I'll set the timer and then I'll just, like if I happen to fall asleep, then I'll fall asleep, but I won't miss anything. But that's pretty much what my nighttime routine looks like.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask why? Why go from the very first Star Trek to current day? Like, what are you getting out of it?
Well, first of all, I'm inspired by it. I love sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And I think secondly is because for the culture, mm-hmm. I just want to watch it.
Yeah. And
especially now, it's like, it's just going back and seeing where it all started. This is a franchise that has been going on since the 60s. And it's still very much alive mm-hmm. today. So they're obviously doing something right.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's very interesting. Just it's inspiring in a lot of different levels, just kind of from a creative standpoint, just being able to see, a brand that has basically outlived like its original, creators, like its original cast. And it's like, it's something that just completely, it's just like Star Wars, it's like it's outlived George Lucas, and George Lucas is still very much alive. But what I mean by that is that like it became so much bigger than himself, which is the reason why George Lucas sold, the Star Wars franchise, because like he's just one man. Like even with his production company, like, there's so many more ideas and stories, and people have so many, like there's so much fan fiction. Mm-hmm. So in order to expand that and to expand that universe is like, it's the same way with business. You're going to get to a point in your business where you can't be, the one man show. You're going to have to let it go and let other people, take the reins, because there's only so much that you can do. It's not sustainable. It gets to that point where it's not sustainable. And I think it's just kind of a lesson in life, to kind of enjoy, the moment when you do have it, when it's yours, And then when you let it go, you can see like how far it's gone, you know? I can only imagine like how Gene Roddenberry is like looking at Star Trek and is like, wow, like, I freaking did that, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a monster.
Yeah. Getting to what we were talking about earlier, I like how you all encompassed Star Trek and business and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
With the hustle culture and everything else, being a content creator, how do you approach your mindset when you are consuming other content? You're doing other things that are not work. Like, like, do you always have a little thought in your mind like, oh man, I should be working on a video. I need to make this post. But then like, I think in order to be, this is personal opinion, but I think in order to be a effective content creator, you have to have life experiences. Yeah. And it's the happy marriage between, and this gets to like maybe a work-life balance like kind of discussion, but I don't think it's really that. I think once you are creating the content that you like, you're working, but you like what you're doing, but you also have to get outside of that to have more perspective. Can you elaborate on how that looks like for you? Like when you set your computer down, or if you're watching something else, or like what's your on a week-to-week basis, where's your mind at?
I completely agree with you. It's so when I first started off this whole, I don't know, this life of mine, I originally set out to just be an actor. That was my original goal. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to be an actor. Like that was it. There was no slashes. There was like nothing, no hyphens. Like that was it. And a few years into my career, I met this other actor who is someone that I came to admire. He, worked in a lot of things, and I was with him one day. We were about to watch a movie, and we were sitting together in the theater, and then he said to me, Romina, you need to have a life outside of acting.
How did that hit you?
That was something that I didn't understand at the time, because so many people always tell you, they always give you advice or, whatever, like they tell you, oh, you should be doing this or like, whatever. And, sometimes you just don't listen when, so when he told me that, it was something that I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, because, I was like in my early 20s and it was like, I know everything, but it didn't really. But obviously it was something that stayed in my memory, because years later I came to understand what he meant, because I actually started living my life. So as I was having, acting was my whole life. Like I didn't want to cut my hair, because if I cut my hair, then I'd have to get new headshots, or I could lose an opportunity. Like, because then I'm suddenly not, casted in the same types of characters, because now I have short hair. And so it was like that was how I was living my life, because that's how I was told that you had to do this, you had to do it completely. And I was so invested in that career that I was not invested in my life, and I was not invested in myself. So, and that's something that is like that you're just asking to get burnt out. Like that is the definition of how to get burnt out, because your definition of success is something that you have no control over. So now it's something that I really, really strive to like yesterday I had a freaking spa day. And I bet people are like, oh, wow, like so privileged, whatever. But listen, my spa was me going into my bathroom. Like I had candles, I had incense, like I had music, like whatever, like frequencies playing and whatever. And like, that was like, I did like a scrub, like that was it. I had like a moment, and I spent like maybe like an hour or like an hour and a half of just like me just like listening to music. And then I drank like hot tea. This all happened in like the bathroom. So like, and like Javier like has seen my bathroom, so he knows that it's nothing like like we're not talking like a Beverly Hills mansion here, okay? It's it's like a tiny little hole, right? But it was me treating myself, because to me, I just love that stuff. I just love, I love spas. I love getting massages. I love, doing nothing all day. It's great. So sometimes I just have to treat myself. And I've learned what that means to me, and if it's playing Fortnite for you, then dude, like go play Fortnite, like whatever it is that makes you feel like you don't have to do anything, do it and try to do it every day. So I'm just going to go back to Star Trek over here. Yeah, no, So the thing about Star Trek is that I originally I just wanted to watch it all because, whatever, for the culture. And but I ended up getting inspired by it. So it's not something that I really search for. So when I'm watching movies, sometimes I do just get that spark of inspiration where it's like, oh my gosh, like I have to do like this thing. And like, oh, like I just got like a really great video idea or like this, like a really great like tweet or something. And maybe I will write it down. Like if I have the chance to do it, I'll write it down, get it out of my brain and then keep watching what I'm watching or reading or whatever. But it is something that like I have to exercise like all the time, which is one of the reasons why I try to do nonfiction. I mean, when I try to do fiction stuff before I go to sleep, because I realized that if I watched or like listened to something that was inspiring me or like giving me strategies or like, hey, top 10 ways that you can hack the Instagram algorithm, it's like if I read that like before I go to sleep, like I'm not going to go to sleep because I will wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, oh my God, like I need to do this thing on like Instagram. Like this is the thing. This is the thing that's going to like blow up in my face. Like I got to do this thing. And the gears just don't stop working. So it's very important for me to, if I can't stop the gears from working, then I will just slow them down just a little bit. And the things that help me to do that is, drinking my tea or, watching something or reading something that doesn't have anything to do with like strategies and like numbers and business. And that's definitely something that I did not learn overnight. And my friend telling me that did not teach me that in that instant, but it is something that I will probably always remember for the rest of my life now that I actually understand what he was trying to teach me that night.
Yeah, I always liken it to comedians. I feel like because you could be really talented at being a comedian, but if you haven't had actual life experiences, you can't relate to other people and when you're telling your jokes and things of that nature. And like your bits may be like 1 minute to 2 minutes, but for people that like have actually gone out and like done things, they can talk about things in a way that is relatable to other people. And I just think it's one of those anomalies where like if you take the time to not do the hustle work and everything, then all of a sudden that time ends up being more exponentially better for you in the long run because you're taking a break. And then in that break, like you said, you end up getting inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. Creator burnout is something that I just haven't experienced because I'm not depending on getting numbers being my success. My success to me is being able to have like my nice bed and being able to go to sleep every night with, 67 degree Fahrenheit, temperature and like
some Star Trek,
just like ideal, frequency, like whatever. Like I decide, what I want my life to look like and I make it look that way so that every time that I go to sleep, I feel accomplished. Even when I don't, if that makes sense. Like even when I've spent my day and I'm like, oh man, like I didn't get that one thing done, but it's like, oh, but it's okay because like I got my turmeric ginger tea, so like it's fine. Like, and I, it's something that I really hope to be able to encourage other creators and other entrepreneurs and people to be able to do is you have to live life. You have to just experience things and not always have work. The same with like relationships as well. I mean, I'm very much like, I love surrounding myself with creators. But I also just love surrounding myself with people who inspire me. So I think just in a general sense, it's like, it could be anybody, if you're a doctor, like it doesn't mean we can't be friends, and I think in that same way, I just constantly want to be inspired, but I don't always need to be working to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every single time you're saying something, there's always other content that you've made where I'm like, oh, I want to ask you about this. But then they're like, how long should we make this podcast? You talked about journaling. Can you elaborate on what that looks like to you? And like, if somebody doesn't journal, what's just a basic like primer into why is it beneficial and what steps can they do to do it?
Sure. I have so many freaking notebooks. I mean, it got to the point where I was like, the people who I know like to give me like little gifts and stuff, I'm like, don't get me notebooks. I do not need another notebook because I got to fill them up. But I guess the first step is get a notebook and
get a writing utensil.
Get a writing. That's the second step. Don't go too fast. don't overwhelm the audience. But, once you have those supplies, then you can actually, what I like to do is, I have different notebooks for different things. So I have a notebook that's just my ideas notebook. And that is, I will write down any ideas that come into my mind whenever. And I try to write in that every day, but, not every day I can come up with brilliant ideas. So, and these are just any ideas, guys. So I will write down anything. And even if it's something that I have no idea if it's possible or not, I'm just like, oh, like there should be, a way for me to teleport. There's my idea for the day, right? But in all seriousness, it's more of a process to be able to get things out of my brain so that I can focus on my tasks that I'm currently doing, so that I'm not like thinking about like this one idea that maybe I may or may not get to at some point of my life. And so I have notebooks also for just anything, like just a scratch notebook where I just like write anything, like, notes from lectures or videos that I watch or books that I'm reading, whatever. Like sometimes I'll put like my to-do list in there as well. Like if that's something that just happens. Mm-hmm. That's just like my pocket notebook that I take with me everywhere. It's always with me. And I actually have an agenda now, which I'm using it's a Moleskine weekly planner, weekly daily planner. I don't know what it's called, but it's broken down, like every page is a week, but then it has like the days on the week on the page. Anyway, it really helps me to go in there every night and I'll write down what I did that day. And that particular agenda has a page on the side where I can write notes. So it's like a lined page. And on that page, I will put the positives and the negatives from that week. So the idea behind that is that when I get to like my 3 months assessment, then I'll go back and look at what was positive and negative.
We're re-encapsulating things from beginning of the podcast. Love it.
I did that on purpose. I planned this whole thing out. And by doing that, I'm able to look at what was negative about, the last 3 months. And then I can, ex-nay that out of my life.
Mm-hmm. And then you also write about things that you're grateful for, don't you?
I do. Wow, you're really good. I have a Gratefulness Journal, so I will write things that I am grateful or things that I appreciate. And I think the story behind that is I actually started that when I was going through a very, 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 very difficult time in my life. And it was a time where I really had to fight to figure out what genuinely made me happy. And it was because I had so many external obstacles that were telling me to not be happy. Mm-hmm. And these are just circumstances of life. And by starting this gratefulness journal, I was able to, and this was something that I was doing every single day during that time because I needed it, because I needed to tell myself that every day was worth it. Because even in the darkness, there were tiny specks of light. And by writing it down every day, every night before I went to sleep, I would realize that there were, these little specks of light. And all I had to do was just really focus on those and make those the main point of my life every day so that the darkness would go away. And it's something that I still keep up. And obviously, like, guys, like, I totally get it. Like, I'd like, because, you watch like these videos where are like, just people talking in podcasts and stuff, and they're like, oh, like I journal for like an hour, like every morning. And I'm just like, girl, please. Like, it's like, you have to, I also like to set up, real life stuff. Obviously, the expectation of like me is that, I will wake up and I'll meditate for like 45 minutes and then like light some incense and then listen to some frequencies that will, make everything, manifest everything that I want, that I dreamed about the night before. But let's be real. Like, I have things to do, like I have breakfast to make. Like, that is not an ideal thing for me to strive for every day, because it's not realistic. And that goes the same way for journaling. Like, I say that I love to journal and I journal like all the time, but it's not something that I do religiously every day. Like, I'm not a monk, which I love monks, by the way. If you're a monk and you're listening, that was not meant to be derogatory in any way. I have the utmost admiration for monks because of the fact that they can, create these schedules for themselves and these rituals, and they can just do that every day. And I cannot do that. Like, I change my schedule up all the time. It's like sometimes I will wake up at 7:00 in the morning, then I will shower, and then I will get to work. And that's like my schedule for like a bunch of months, right? But then I'll suddenly change it completely. And I'm like, nope, you know what? I'm going to wake up at 9:00 and I'm going to shower at like 7 p.m. right before I go to sleep. And like, that's, and then I do that for a bunch of months. It's like, I like to change things up. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this, is because I can, live life the way that I want. And I don't have to show up at an office at 9:00 in the morning every single weekday. I can set up my office days and make it however I want it to be. So in the same way, journaling, it's like, I encourage people to journal, but don't feel like it has to be homework, because then that's
a good point.
You're losing,
I like how you said that, yeah.
You're losing the whole point of it. It's like, you try to do it as much as possible. And like, because if I start to, schedule out times for me to write in my gratefulness journal, and then I'm going to work in my to-do list journal, and I'm going to work in my what I did today journal, and then I'm going to work in this other journal. It's like, well, I'm going to spend like 3 hours like every day just journaling.
And meditate.
Like, yeah, exactly. And then meditate and listen to my frequencies. Like, no, I have Star Trek episodes.
Thank you for elaborating on that. And it sounds like it's like, try it. If it works for you, then do it. And then if not, hey, move on to something else.
Yeah.
But 2 things I always ask to everybody at the end of the podcast. First one is, why do you do what you do?
I guess because part of me is insane. And I love to create. Like, that's just what I am. And it doesn't matter what it is, like I love to draw. And sometimes that's just like, that's my life. Like, and sometimes I'll play the guitar. I'm not very good. That's why I don't do it in public. But it's just a part of who I am. I think it's like, it's in my genes. And I think just kind of in the bigger picture, just to kind of bring it back to my purpose of what I was talking about earlier, there's I want to inspire people, because I get so inspired by other people, and I want to make, like the next Steve Jobs. Like, I want that to happen because of something that I did. And it's not really so much like to feed my ego as much as because of the fact that I can't do certain things, like there's certain things that I don't know how to do. I know that there's someone out there who does. And I want to encourage those people to do those things.
That's awesome. Boom. And then the second part is, if you were to give advice to somebody that is just starting their path, and most of the time I frame it in whoever's career path it is, if they're just graduating college from, like, it's Romina back in those days to where you're at now, what are some pieces of advice that you would tell people to get to where you're at now?
There is a great quote from a poet called Rumi. And the quote is, "Step onto the way and the way will appear." And I really do think that letting life guide you is kind of, I think it's good advice, because there's so much that you want to control, especially when you are just, either coming out of high school or coming out of college. You're ready to take on life. But there is so much about life that you can't control. And I think that, there's enough people who are talking about strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many ways to go about it. And like, I talk about it all of the time, and so I encourage strategy, but like we were talking about earlier, like, don't let it be your life. You have to have certain experiences to learn from and to get inspired from, and that will fuel you to create. And I think that if you just get started, you will find your voice, because if you're living inside of the dome that is your brain, that's where you're going to live. And you have to start expressing yourself and start putting yourself out there in order to figure out what your voice is. Because when I first started, I thought that I had a voice. I thought that I knew what my voice was, because it was the voice that I was using to speak to myself in my head. Mm-hmm. But that is not the same voice that I use to speak to other people. And that is my voice.
Boom. Romina dropping bombs on the podcast. That's awesome. To elaborate on that, when you get started, how important is it to be consistent?
I think that it is important,
mm-hmm.
because if you don't set up some kind of consistency, you can drop out of it. You can give up. And that's not to say that you can't stop doing something if you realize you don't like to do it.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you set out, it's kind of like working out. Like if you set out a day, every Friday at 10 a.m., I'm going to go to the gym, then without question, that's what you're going to do every Friday at 10 a.m. So you won't schedule anything else around that. But if you aren't consistent about it and you start to allow other things to come into play, then you're going to be distracted and you're going to get interrupted every time. It's like if you don't take it seriously, then you're not going to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some kind of consistency as far as staying on task.
Yeah. Say you are passionate about something, well, then prove it through consistency. It's like a litmus test. Like, because if you can get through the time, especially with working out, it's like if you can get through the times where it's 10 a.m. and you're still in bed and you've hit like the snooze or something like that and you haven't gone, you're like, but if you still like go work out, that you're putting forth that effort, and then you actually get to see results.
Exactly. And I think that's what will fuel you to keep going as well. Plus, it's like, just speaking specifically about content creators,
mm-hmm.
There's so many who will just be like, oh, I need to get like this one, like what camera should I get to like get started? And I'm like, well, do you have an iPhone? 98% of the time they'll be like, yes, I do have an iPhone. It's actually the latest iPhone.
And like, that's probably better than the camera that I have.
I'm like, you have yourself a camera. So get started. And guess what? No matter how many podcasts, no matter how many people say that, people still ask the question and people still do not believe you. Mm-hmm. And they will still go out and spend $3,000 buying a camera that then they will have to shove under their bed or sell on eBay for a quarter of the cost 6 months later because they realized that they actually didn't like doing it. And that's why I go back to, you have to just start to do it. You have to just start doing it and figuring it out because when I started producing, it was something that I didn't plan on doing it. Like I said, I planned on being an actor. That was like it. And I got opportunities to be a producer on various projects, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like in the first feature film that I produced, like this massive thing, I was suddenly in charge of 40 people. And most of them had been on many sets for decades. So I was suddenly someone who didn't know anything and was in charge. But because I said yes to that, I got to learn so much very, very quickly. And I think if you put yourself out there and are willing to be vulnerable and make the mistakes, you will learn. You will develop. I made so many mistakes. So many people got mad at me because of how stupid and dumb I was. But they were kind to me, even though like they were like, dude, what are you doing? You know, like
especially in a producer role, if you're not on top of your things.
Yeah, exactly.
It trickles down throughout the rest of the production.
Absolutely. And even with all of that, I was able to learn so that the next project, it was like
snapping. There you go.
That was my imitation of Javier.
There we go.
Just snap.
Thank you for all of the answers and all of the being able to elaborate on all this stuff. Where can people find you?
Sure. I have a website, which is REDROMINA.com. And pretty much you can find everything about me on there. I try to make my website as fun as possible. I'd actually love to add like a game or something on there so that like people can just come and chill on my website.
Wow, that's an awesome
idea. Hey, don't steal that. That's my idea. No,
I'm sure there's an abundance of games.
I'm kidding. As you can Shockwave. Just put like a flash game in there. Anyway, that's like tangent.
Little did you know there's going to be Pong on website.
Next time you want to play Dig Dug. So back to the point. Red Romina. I'm Red Romina all over the internet. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. 100K goal, baby.
Can you explain your newsletter?
Oh, my newsletter. Yes. I have a newsletter which I sometimes update, maybe like a couple times a month. And that is the Explorer's Digest. And that newsletter is meant to be, it is a digest of pretty much stuff that I find interesting, which does include my content sometimes. But I will also put like articles that I've read, music that I've found inspiring, or maybe like a movie that I watched, or something that I feel is worth sharing, like a quote maybe. Something that I think might inspire people or that will be valuable, teach them to kind of, do whatever it is they're doing.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
If you would like to share this podcast out, don't forget to also leave a review if you are consuming this on iTunes. And then you can tag me at Javier Mercedes X. That's JAVIER MERCEDES X. I didn't realize how many people don't know how to spell Mercedes. And to bring everything around, she gave me a tea at the very beginning of this podcast, and it comes with a special Mercedes cup. # sponsor me, Mercedes. That would be really cool, by the way. Thank you again. Until next time, live a life of abundance, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
Heck yeah.
Awesome.